Hello, friend, and anyone who's listening to this at this time. This is Sharaquino, and you're listening to the Contemplative Currents podcast. So, today I wanted to talk about the place of practice, prayer, and communion after deconstructing religion. That's something that I've been thinking about in recent times. And I have so much to say, and I'm actually thinking of having this written as my next essay on my Substack. So look out for that. Of course, plans may change depending on what I'm contemplating on, depending on what comes up for me in the next couple of days. Um, So, yes, this is going to be about prayer. This is going to be about practice, or what I call practice, and communion, especially after deconstructing religion. Now, I'm not going to go into my thoughts about deconstruction at this moment, and that may not be everybody's experience. But one thing that's been interesting for me to observe is how um, oftentimes we go through this phase of realizing that what we thought was true, what we thought about religion or religious practices, they weren't as they weren't as true or real as we thought. So for someone like me, I had gone through the understanding, really, really understanding that what I believed about God or the Bible or Christianity wasn't exactly as I thought it was. And what happens to a lot of people who go through deconstruction, and I was there also, is that you just realize, oh my God, this water is so dirty. So you take the water and you throw it out, and you forget the baby in the bathwater. So usually in spaces like on TikTok where I see the hashtag deconstruction, it's always interesting for me to see how it's mostly about trashing religion, especially Christianity in this case. Um, and I once again I was so there, and I'm in some ways I have my fun times uh poking holes at different parts of the Christian faith or the Christian practice. um but I can almost tell where one is within the should I say, the heels of deconstruction. Because what happens is, and what has happened for me, and maybe that's going to be different for everybody, is you get to a point where deconstruction, or I should say it this way, deconstruction should end in a reconstruction. um, Maybe that's not going to be everybody's experience, but for me, it's been more about reconstruction. And so there are three parts of reconstruction for me that I want to share about here. That's in prayer, in practice, and communion. And I'll start with prayer. So prayer for me in the past used to be this thing where it was this part of of the faith where I am requesting something of God, right? Requesting, or trying to make God feel happy, and then making a request to God. You know, in opening your eyes to see things, they need to be clearer. It becomes way more obvious that there's no God out there. There's no God out there, and there's also no God in there or in here. If I would use that description. And so when there's no God out there and there's no God in here, and all things are God, that shapes how one experiences the divine, or how one experiences God. And if that changes how you experience God, then you see that prayer becomes something totally different. So for me, prayer has been I see prayer in three dimensions. One, centering prayer, which is the active, for me, is the more active part of prayer, where if you don't know anything about centering prayer, it was made popular by the late Thomas Merton. Centering prayer is in practice is it's more about holding a word or a phrase over and over in your mind. It could be a phrase like God is love, or love, or God, something. Holding that in your mind and repeating that over and over until you find some place of stillness, and then you stay there. And then in your repeating over and over, you may notice your mind or your thoughts straying, so you want to bring your thoughts back and focus again on the mantra. Um, so for me, the active form of prayer has been centering prayer. The 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 deeper part of prayer. Actually, I'll talk about the more passive aspect of prayer for me has been more about seeing that my entire life is a prayer. And I think I wrote an article on that on my Substack. If you ever go on my Substack and search for prayer, it's one of that is I think it's called my my life is a prayer, or our lives are prayers, or something like that. So I'm seeing that my entire existence, so to say, is a prayer, or is an offering, now, a prayer offering. Um, yeah, I go deeper into that in that post. You should check it out if you've not already done that. So yeah, I think I could talk about that for a long time. Seeing that there's once again, seeing that there's no God out there, there's no God in here, and all is the self. Um, one one can then fall with their arms wide open to be the prayer that's being offered to God and being received by God, for himself and to himself. Yeah, I know that sounds a little bit poetic, but yes, that's I wrote more about that there. Anyway, the third form of prayer for me is more about the more I talked about the passive and the active part of prayer. This is more or less the neutral part of prayer, which is for me is just sitting in silence, extendedly in silence. And so I in practice, for me, that really looks like multiple hours of the day, or multiple times in the day. I usually target my 4Ds: the day, day, dawn, dark, and dusk. Um, so those four hinges of the day, I sit in extendedly in silence. The way like to describe that is um, it's more of a surrendering to all that is. You see how that's kind of a prayer? It's like surrendering my entire self, my stories, my agenda, my sense of self, my energies. It's a total dropping of all of that into silence, just sitting there, recognizing presence, recognizing that there's nothing outside or inside apart from God. Um, I wish there was a better way to articulate that, but it's the total surrendering of oneself. So to me, the most beautiful part of the entire day for me, or of any day for me is the hours, those 4 hours of prayer, what I call silent prayer. So yes, in in prayer in practice for me is about the active prayer. Um Active prayer usually with centering prayer, the passive prayer, which is or the neutral prayer, which is me in silence, um and the more passive form of prayer, seeing myself as prayer itself. But then there's a part of prayer for me that I've started to enjoy, which is reading, creating my own prayers, or creating actual, should I say, liturgical prayers. And I've been so inspired by the work of Padraig Otuame, and thanks to my friend Ginny, who put me on to John O'Donoghue. I think that's how it's pronounced. Just reading the prayers that have been created, that have been written as poems. That itself is, to me, that's that's what I will then call worship. There's just so much satisfaction, so much life in being able to read those prayers out, to embody those prayers. And if you've not already seen, on my Substack, I have a number of prayers. One of them is called a prayer of extolation, which I should read that here, so you understand what I mean by, when it's written so poetic, when it calls to a deeper side of yourself, and yourself being the true self, or what I can then call God. Um, it's such a powerful invocation. So, my this prayer is called a prayer of extolation, which I wrote on the 18th of November. So it goes like this: You whose name could never be known, you whose name could never be called, you are the unseen presence, yet all we see are the imprints of your boundless artistry, the ever-present witness. Rarely do our ears hear your voice, yet every sound carries the echoes of your eternal melody. Every movement is a dance initiated by you. Every taste is for you, be it ice cream or for fashion. Every longing is for you, even our most carnal desires. It's obvious, lover, that every desire comes out of you and dissolves back into you. All of our joy, all of our love is contained in you. You are beyond our grasp, yet your wonders touch our hearts and stir our souls in ways we cannot explain. The world searches for you in books, in temples, in philosophies and doctrines and dogma and arguments and confusion, and in nature, in nature biases through psychedelics and plant medicine. Yet all along, you are the secret sanctuary hidden within us, the eternal mystery veiled in plain sight. Of course, there has never been a you there and an us here. There's only you. And you don't exist. You don't exist in exalted state of mind, not in heightened state either. And that's the thing, you don't exist at all. Yet all of existence is you. You are nowhere, yet you are everywhere. You are nothing, yet you are everything. While we seek you tirelessly, you remain unlost, for you have never strayed from anyone. You change forms and change colors. You appear and disappear into yourself as yourself, forgetting yourself in us, but still always knowing. You are here, always here, nearer than breath, closer than thought, quiet, patient, and endlessly loving. And so we rest in the knowing that every whispered or silent prayer, whether in contemplative sit or spoken aloud in fervent discourse, is you praying all along. For you hear not only our words, but the unspoken cries of every broken heart. Who would be drawn to prayer if not you? Who would utter these prayers if not you? In your infinite love, you reveal yourself as the grace that surpasses all understanding. Ooh, I wrote this, but you don't know how many times I've actually read this out. Um, so this is what I part of what I enjoy about prayers, just being able to utter these words and um utter these words into oneself. It's something. Okay, so that's about prayer. Also with I was going to talk about practice too. Of course, the idea of practice when it comes to life generally, and this spiritual walk, which is not really separate from the day-to-day walk. My day-to-day living is my day-to-day living has become a spiritual practice. And I find the practice isn't necessarily about it's not necessarily about the what I used to see as rigid practices of of religion. It's more about recognizing that everything is relational. Everything is about one's relationship with oneself and with others. And so when I see that uh, it's just about relationships, so my relationships becomes an avenue in which I practice love. Love for others and love for one's self. It really, at the end of the day, there's no practice. In fact, all of religion has been pointing us to just that, has been pointing us to how to see God in ourselves and see God in others. So when I hurt others, it it shows me places in myself that I need to bring attention to. Shows me places in myself where I have not uh I'll use the word mastered. Shows how where I need to do the work. When I desert myself and chase other things, it shows also places in which I need to love myself. So practice in essence is really about people and my own self. It's not so much about the paraphernalia and the objects that we interact with day to day. It's really about one's relationship with oneself and with others. And quite honestly, this looks like what Jesus had been talking about in the scriptures. Um, he talked about he said this. I'm going to paraphrase here. This I leave you with. This command I leave you with, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your might, and with all your strength. Then he says, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And oftentimes, I think the the interpretation is usually, oh, love your neighbor the way you would love yourself. But I find it's not. It goes deeper than that. It's love your neighbor because as yourself, because your neighbor is yourself. So in short, your relationship with your neighbor is your relationship with yourself. Your relationship with yourself is the relationship with your neighbor. And by neighbor here, of course, it's not. We're not referring to your next door, your physical next door neighbor. It's those within your proximity. Um, and of course, that's going to be harder when you recognize people who don't look like you, don't think like you, who believe differently than you, those who tend to hurt us or seem to hurt us. So practice then becomes more about loving oneself and loving one's neighbor. So then that leaves one with the last part of that needs reconstructing when after deconstruction, and that's community. So for me, I found after deconstructing, I was in one of those camps where I'm like, yeah, I don't need to go to church, I don't need to go to a temple, like all of that is just bullshit. Things are, that those are things to control people, but I find that um communion is communion is important. It's one of the things that is one of the baby part of the baby that's in the bathwater, right? We want to find avenues in which we can uplift others, and avenues in which we can be uplifted. We want to be around people who challenge us, to see places where we parts of us that are incomplete. And I'm talking about parts here, not the whole. Parts of us that are incomplete, and all of that is relational. So being able to be around those who are on the same uh, on the same journey or on the same path, which obviously, I mean, when I say journey or path here, there's ultimately there's no path, ultimately there's no journey, right? But people um who who you can express this inexpressible jewel, that is important. And so for me, even though I do not necessarily belong to any church or place of worship, I meet with an amazing group of people every morning for meditation. And if you don't know about this, it's meditationchapel.org. I'm part of the Peace Chapel, the morning Peace Chapel meetup. So we meet at 7:20 a.m. Eastern time every single day. And so that has become more or less the family in which we pray together. And prayer here is meditation, um, and also intercessory prayer, um, and then we commune together. And I have some deep relationships with individuals from that group. So yeah, with deconstructing, I think that when after one deconstructs, you want to reconstruct, and part of reconstruction is seeing the place of prayer, the place of practice, and the place of communion. And I want to say that after reconstructing, you find something even more beautiful in these three aspects. After reconstructing, we see why why those were corrupted with the regular stereotypical models of operation in organized religion. We see the beauty of prayer, see the beauty of communion, and the beauty of practice. There's something really beautiful about when one does these things in more or less consciously. As a matter of fact, I actually I'm going to share here something I recently found out. Let me in Padraig Otuame's book Being Here. He talks about a part of the Gospels that was not added to what we currently have in the gospel. There's a text in Codex Bizai, a 15th or a 5th century binding of the four gospels of an Acts that was taken away, that was not included in the canonical gospels. And this was of Jesus. Jesus was saying this. He said, on the same day when he saw a certain man working on the Sabbath, he said to him, "Oh man, if you know what you're doing, you're blessed. But if you do not know, you're cursed and a transgressor of the law." So I find that in our regular in a lot of religious practices, we do not know what we are doing. We end up doing things that that were told to us to do. So whether it's in prayer, oh, this is how you should pray, or in practice, just do these practices, just do them. That's what you should do. But when you know what you're doing, when you're conscious, when there's some consciousness into of what you're practicing, there's a different flavor. Yeah. Prayer, practice, and communion. To me now, it looks like those are three things that I that I'm here for. That this incarnation, or uh this individual enjoys. Okay, I hope you enjoyed some of, or you could take away something from this rambling. Thanks for listening, and I'll probably put this in a more coherent essay. So if you are not subscribed to my Substack, please head over there. It's sharequinu.substack.com. And if you enjoyed this, let me know if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts. I'd appreciate some feedback. Um, all right, people, grace and peace. And I would see you in another recording. Bye for now.